Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Marvel Strike Force. Are you ready for Omega Red? No, not this one. You know, the one, the new one that they're trying to sell us, aka Omega Red Dark Phoenix. Well, as you guys know, if you've been following along with the news, there is a Kyln Tower in just under 2 weeks that is going to involve requiring a handful of different characters to get free-to-play shards for Omega Red Dark Phoenix. I know it's a little bit early. However, I do want to do a video talking about all the potential characters that we could be using, but I want to kind of narrow this down a little bit to make it easier for you guys, because there's only 2 weeks to prepare these characters for this. And I know that we don't have the enemies on the nodes, that kind of thing, which I will be talking about as soon as they become available. I do want to kind of like start preparing both my own roster, and maybe you guys will start thinking about it as well, so we can see who's really valid and who's even worth considering for this. So if you're ready to go, everybody, let's boil this down. All right, everybody, and so this might look a little bit weird because I am recording this after the video was recorded. Some might say, well, why don't you just record the video again? And that's because I don't like doing that too often, because I end up losing track of what I originally said, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, the reason why I'm doing this is because in my video, I'm going to be talking about how maybe Kyln has the various game modes active within the rooms itself. I've been told, apparently the envoys have been told, that it's only going to be specifically for Jean Grey and for Hercules. Now, something like this has never been coded ever before in the game for a specific character to then have, you know, their text excluded with the characters and the numbers and all that in the game mode. So I am tickle me somewhat skeptical whether or not it's actually going to work properly and coded properly for Jean Grey and Hercules only. We'll have to see, right? When the JSON files come out for Kyln Tower, I'll take an eye on that. I'm not even sure how I'd necessarily see that in the JSON files, actually. But that would at least tell me whether or not it's a room game modes or not, which normally you would see there. So anytime that I mention in this video where maybe it might be for the wider characters, that may or may not be true. We won't know until it's close to the time and it's more official, because you know, I don't 100% trust Scopely when they say something. That's just how it is right now, and they don't often come through with the things that they say. So we'll have to find out. But a lot of the character choices that I have talked about in this video still remains true. Just wanted to point that out for, before we get started. Now, what am I even talking about, right? You know, Kyln Tower is... I'm not going to go over everything here, but they've changed it. Instead of like before, we had like 46 floors. Now it's just 20 floors. So if you haven't been around for a Kyln Tower before, basically these are kind of like scourges. It's not like Sword Satellite, because Sword Satellite or AK Winter's Peak, which we just had, that's something that resets every day. Kyln Tower does not. Kyln Tower is something that you kind of run, and if you screw up, then you need to reset it and try it again, that kind of thing. But you're not screwed, right? Like, you can reset it and then climb up again. And since there's only 20 floors, it's not actually going to be that painful, I hope. I swear, if they put in something like Frozen Dimension with like the speed bar crap that they put in that made everyone go first, like, I'm going to lose it. But let's just assume and hope that they're not going to do that, and they're not going to make it a living nightmare for the rest of the player base. But let's take a look at the table once again. And so the characters that you're going to need for this is unrestricted on floors 1 to 10. This is actually really important, because a lot of the characters that you're going to want to bring into the higher floors, and especially when we're talking about like 17 through 20, you know, you might want to pre-charge them. You know, depending on what characters you have available to you, characters like Storm, for example, who have charges, you could use the early floors that are low level to basically charge her up on her basic and make sure that she comes in onto one of the other floors with full charges. So that's the great thing about Kyln, is that these kind of things carry over. Also, in the previous Kyln that had 46 floors, it was quite common to charge up characters like Sunspot, for example, because Sunspot had a charge mechanic. And for those of us who have done DD8, Global Hero, and used the Extreme X-Men side of things, this is still probably going to be valid for you on some of these higher floors, because you probably will have them at purple level 3 when you did your Odin chase. So floor 18, for example, X-Men, and then floor 20 also can be, you know, use Extreme X-Men. How valid they're going to be, that part I don't know, because they're highly recommending you to use characters like Jean Grey and Hercules. But they've said that the game mode text will be active. Now, we know at least raids and War Text are going to be active because those are the specific, and Crucible actually as well, for that matter. I think it's everything. I believe they say something about that here in the requirements. So our top strike scientists have found ways to activate the full power of Jean Grey and Hercules. Now, I don't think it's specifically them. I'm pretty sure it's just the entire game mode. Game mode and character prerequisites, aka 3 or more, play, that kind of text, will be considered fully met within Kyln's walls. It doesn't specifically say it's only to Jean Grey and Hercules, so I have to assume, I mean, I shouldn't assume because it's Scopely, but that it could be for the entire, any of the characters that you use in here. So if you do decide to use Extreme X-Men, then they should have their raid text active, which is quite powerful as well. Absolute A-Force should have their war text active, and so on and so forth. So I actually think because of that, now it's double-edged. So that part's a double-edged sword because that means the enemies will have it too. So you have to be cautious about that. That's still a thing. But by and large, with all of these extra game mode bonuses active, it may or may not be as hard as, maybe it's not super difficult. But I imagine that, again, because if you've ever read Hercules' text, if you watched my Should You Core video, you know that Hercules' kit with the team, he pulls out all the buffs from the enemies, he strips everything. It's just, that's insane. So I think that they're going to want to push you to be using him. So we'll talk about that as well. And back to this. So again, A-Force, largely absolute A-Force. We'll take a look though. Avengers and X-Men, there's crossovers a bunch of times. And finally, floor 20, Avengers or X-Men, probably going to be your Uncanny Avengers. And you're going to get shards from 2-star all the way up to 4-star. He is a 2-star unlock. And the recommended level, this is actually, I'm surprised, honestly. So if they didn't say recommended levels for cells 1 to 10. However, I got to assume that that's under level 70. Otherwise, why is levels 11 through 13 level 70? This is pretty easy. So they're actually making it fairly easy to get a 2-star, which is actually surprising. Because we had to pull teeth, I think, to get Zombie Scarlet Witch at 3-star. So they're making it a little bit easier this time around. Maybe they've learned some of their lessons regarding that and the experience that Zombie Scarlet Witch was. What's also interesting is they are going to be giving Omega Red red stars through the Race to 105 event. We'll probably be talking about that in a separate video, I'm sure. I don't think I've done it yet. So I'm recording this video like a day early. But anyways, all the way up to 4 yellows. So it'll be interesting to see how many red stars free to play can reasonably get. Now, let's take a look at the characters. Let's start with A-Force, right? So it is the broader tag. It is not specifically absolute A-Force, but we know that most of this is trash. So what am I planning to do? Well, I'm planning on using Wasp, Kahori, and Miss Marvel Classic. Those are the 3 characters I hope to continue to use. You can only use 3, keep in mind, per level. Is there a reason why you might want to use some of the other characters? Maybe. Maybe your sustain is not great enough to get through some of these nodes because you need to clear level 11 A-Force, level 14 A-Force, and level 17 A-Force. And now level 17 requires level 100. So because it's only blue 3 for these other ones, maybe I could go in and just use Photon, for example, for 11 and 14. I'm not saying that you should level Photon. It just depends on your, where you're at, if you're a veteran player or if you're a newer or mid-game player, that kind of thing. I think these 3 are going to be the best trio. However, that being said, Medusa will have War Text active. I just don't know if there's going to be... She's low stars. And if you have her at higher stars, this may very well be valid. But at a 3-star, she's like a stronger Black Bolt. So as far as her kit goes, yeah, some of this stuff may be valid. Namely, I would say the Protector stuff spawning with Safeguard. Because the War Text is active, that's what I could see being useful. But by and large, I just think I'd rather have characters that have higher stats. And so my Wasp, the difference between my Wasp and my Medusa, even if I were to gear Medusa up higher, would be night and day. So unless there's an absolute reason, like passive, that I need to bring her in, I'm probably going to stick with these characters here. And do keep in mind that, like, everything that says, in war, and also this stuff. So Kahori is going to be like a must-have, right? Because if what we're hearing about Hercules and Jean is true, then this stuff should be active too. The 4 or more absolute A-Force allies, this should be considered, this should be working properly, at least within Kyln. So they cannot fill speed bar for themselves or allies. This one's huge, right? She starts off with 2 turns. You can get exposed off with the basic, unless they got spawn taunts or something crazy like that. So a lot of these war mechanics are all going to be valid, and assuming that it works properly. And I believe that Miss Marvel Classic also has a lot of war text in here, especially on the passive. So a lot of this stuff is going to be very, very strong. So those are the 3 characters that I'm looking forward to using. I really hope it's not a case where like they're expecting you to do sacks, because while I have Ironheart at purple 2, and hypothetically I could add purple 3 onto her, I really don't like the idea of potentially, if they're forcing you to do that, I'm not saying it is, but hypothetically, if they want to make it harder, especially on level 17 plus, if they want to say, hey, you need to come in with a sack and upgrade people to purple 3 just to do that. So I really hope that that's not the case. Let's take a look at the Avengers tag here. Oh, I screwed that up. I took too many. Avenger tag. There's a lot to choose from. You know what? The Liberty patch may actually be in by this point, because Kyln is on the 27th of January. And I really do think, actually, that I got to imagine the Capsam and Liberty patch is implemented before the 27th. Maybe, maybe not, but do keep that in mind, because Capsam is going to be an absolute beast, and actually he could be really, really good for this, because he's an insanely good plug-and-play character. And once he gets a stat boost, I think it's going to be absolutely bonkers. So that's a potential option there, not War Machine necessarily. Also, keep in mind that the Liberty team actually is a war team, so all of that text would be active as well. Even though we won't have the new characters from Liberty, if we can get the rework of Captain Sandman, that could be really good. But nonetheless, the other Avenger characters that you're obviously going to have a part of the Uncanny Avenger team, well, Sam Wilson again as regular Falcon, and then we have Storm, Beast, Jean Grey, of course, Hercules, and all of that. As far as other characters you might have at purple 3, you might have Hank Pym because of Dark Dimension 8. If you're one of those earlier clearers of Global Hero and you happen to have upgraded Hank Pym, that could be a potential thing too. He was a common pick back then as well. Now, I don't expect people to have the Mighty Avengers built up. Don't even ask me why I did it. They were like level 90. I was pretty close. I said, why the fuck not? Because I had lots of spare resources. So that's why I decided to do that. But I don't think that new and mid-game players should really prioritize the other Mighty Avengers, which is going to be your Scarlet Witch, your Vision, and your Invisible Woman. The only priority really is Falcon and Hercules at this point. So I don't think that that's going to be a big deal. So I think as far as running the Avengers lane, like any of this character, you could use them, right? If you're a veteran player, because Blue 5, that section is level 95, hypothetically, right, like you could use some of these other characters because you probably do have them at Blue 3+, like, because it's pretty easy to do. Your Rebirth, your Captain America, your Iron Man from Illuminati, right? And then you could probably just hodgepodge it and get through. But as far as the top of the line, getting towards that 4-star for both node number 19 down here for the Avengers and node number 20, they're pushing you to get Uncanny Avengers without a doubt. But one thing that I would obviously, because you're having to level Storm anyways for Uncanny Avengers, this is something that I'm thinking about to use on the earlier nodes to charge her up. That's a tactic which I'll most likely there's going to be another video closer to the time to remind people about this. But this is going to be a pretty big thing to have her charged up and then just like walk into node 20. Or maybe one of these other ones have a really hard node and then just let loose on the ultimate and then it kills the entire field. So that's something that I would expect to do on Kyln Tower. But I have a feeling that we're going to be using a lot of Beast and then Hercules and Jean Grey, because Beast is the only real sustain method for the team. He's the support of the team, and I think that's going to be really, really important. That being said, you kind of need to purple 3 these characters, the Uncanny Avengers anyways, because of Spotlight 2. So those are the characters that you're probably going to be crutching on the most. Let's talk about the X-Men, though, just to talk about what I talked about earlier on, and that is going to be probably, if you have other characters to use, there's a combination of Immortal X-Men and Extreme X-Men. I think Extreme is probably the most like... Oh, actually, you know what? Fuck. Even Old Man Logan. You know what? You probably most definitely have him at purple 3 because you should. And so you can very well use him in nodes 18 or nodes 12, 15, and 18. You'd absolutely run wild with this because Old Man Logan is insane. He also will probably have his War Text active, which I believe, while he doesn't have a ton... he doesn't. There's War Offense stuff. There's a little bit of that actually, but it's not a ton. Now that I think about it, it doesn't have a lot like this. I guess the basic I think is the Awakened ability. He's an insane character, anyways, right? So you can just include him with Nightcrawler and like Forge or Sunspot or like there's a lot to choose from. I don't see this being that hard. However, I could see them really gating floors 20, like the last floor, because it seems to suggest that if you don't clear floor 20, you're not going to get enough shards for yellow, which is why it's gated here at the end here at floors 13, 16, and 20 as the various checkpoints for this. very much I could assume that that's going to require the combination of Jean Grey, Beast, and Hercules. But there's a lot of options, right? Because it's both. So maybe it's a super long node. Maybe there's like 20 enemies and you're supposed to do it with multiple teams. I guess that's what we'll have to figure out. Hell, even Phoenix is going to have the rework at this point if you're willing to put purple 3 onto her, right? Like if you have some extra purple ISOs, if you're in that situation. But I do understand, and there will be another video discussing this because I think we're in a point where, you know, purple ISO is not the easiest to get through. You know, there hasn't been a major surplus as far as both purple ions, but also the ISO crystals. Actually, I might go as far as saying the ISO crystals might be a bigger issue now at this point than the ions. There just hasn't been a broad increase across the board in any of this, and I do think that's something that Scopely needs to address and actually consider. As far as how much we're getting, right, you know, just I'm on Phoenix Force Fitness right now, yeah, because I'm recording this a couple days early. You know, there is some stuff in the earlier milestones, but that's something I'm gonna have to start keeping track of. Like, how much are we getting out of the events? Because with the loss of Battle World, I really don't think we're in some sort of positive direction as far as maybe ions might be about the same, but the crystals is definitely, I hate these like basic orbs because you can't actually choose. As far as where we get the actual real stuff, I think it's in the Alliance milestone, right? These ones. So if you're not performing well into these milestones, this is your major source of ISO 8 credits where you can choose which class orb you want to open yourself. And I think that's going to be the biggest crunch in purple ISO related stuff for most people. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Again, I would just obviously save onto your purple ISO. I did this video mainly to give you guys a heads up of what to expect and also kind of the characters that you should be thinking of. This is going to be quite different depending on whether or not you're a new and mid-game player, or if you're an end-game veteran player, that you're going to have a lot more characters to choose from than others will. So just a heads up. That's it for now, everyone. Let me know what your thoughts about Omega Red and Kyln Tower are in the comments down below. And until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.